All right, let's dive right in. Today we're cracking open a book that completely changed how we think about science. Thomas Kuhn's The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. We're going to explore his powerful idea that the history of science isn't some straight, predictable line of progress. Nope, it's something way more dramatic, way more disruptive.
And Kuhn kicks things off with his huge challenge. He basically says, what if we stop treating history like some dusty old attic filled with names and dates? What if, instead, we used it as a tool powerful enough to completely shatter the image of science we all have in our heads?
I know, that's a pretty bold statement. But Kuhn's whole argument is that from the moment we open our very first science textbook, we're being fed a picture of science that's just fundamentally misleading. And that distorted picture ends up shaping everything we think we know about discovery and progress.
So what is this flawed image exactly? And where does it even come from? Well, Kuhn points the finger squarely at the science textbook.
Yeah, you know this story. We all learned it. Science is this steady, step-by-step process. Every new discovery is just one more brick being neatly added to this giant wall of knowledge. Progress is always moving forward in a straight line. And all those old ideas from the past? Those were just silly mistakes, right? Myths we've thankfully grown out of.
And Kuhn has this absolutely brilliant way of putting it. He says, learning about real science from a textbook is like trying to understand a country by only looking at a tourist brochure. Sure, you see all the pretty landmarks, but you miss the actual culture, the messy, complicated, fascinating reality of how things actually work.
Okay, so what happens when you toss the brochure and actually dig into the real history? Well, when historians started doing that, not using textbooks, but looking at the original source material, that neat little picture started to completely crumble.
They found something that was, frankly, astonishing. When you really look at theories that we now consider totally wrong, like Aristotle's physics or the idea of phlogiston in chemistry, you realize they weren't just silly guesses. They were actually incredibly detailed, logical systems for explaining the world, built on the best evidence people had at the time.
And this is where it gets really sticky. Because if you're going to call those old beliefs myths, then you have to face a pretty uncomfortable truth. Our own scientific knowledge, which is produced by very similar methods, could just as easily be seen as a myth by people in the future. That's a deeply unsettling thought.
So suddenly, that whole clean brick-by-brick model of science is in total crisis. And it forces us to ask a much, much harder question. If scientific progress isn't just about piling up more facts, then what in the world is it?
To answer that, Kuhn rolls out this whole new framework, and it's built around two massive ideas that you've probably heard of: normal science and scientific revolutions.
Okay, first up is normal science. Now this is what most scientists do most of the time. It's not the sexy, headline-grabbing stuff. It's not about trying to overturn everything we know. It's more like puzzle solving. Imagine you've got a jigsaw puzzle. The picture on the box is the accepted theory and everyone agrees on it. Normal science is the meticulous work of finding all the little pieces and making them fit.
Normal science is super efficient at filling in that puzzle. But here's the catch. The very rules that make it so good at solving puzzles also make it really good at ignoring anything that doesn't seem to fit in the box. And every once in a while, a puzzle piece shows up that, no matter how you turn it, just refuses to fit.
That stubborn puzzle piece is what Kuhn calls an anomaly. At first, scientists try to jam it in, or maybe file down the edges to make it work. But when that anomaly just won't go away, it triggers a crisis. The entire community starts to lose faith in the picture on the box. The foundations feel shaky, and that's when the stage is set for a revolution. And this brings us to the big one, the scientific revolution. Now, this is absolutely key. A revolution isn't about adding one more piece to the puzzle. It's about throwing the entire puzzle, the box, the table, everything into the fire and starting over with a completely new picture, a new game with new rules.
This really shows you the difference, doesn't it? On one side, you've got that old textbook view, nice, neat, steady progress. But on the other, you have Kuhn's model. It's messy, it's disruptive, it's revolutionary. It's not about adding another brick to the wall. It's about realizing the whole foundation is cracked, and you have to tear the thing down to build something new from scratch.
So, where does all this leave us? It gives us a completely new image of science. It's not some cold, robotic march toward truth. It's dynamic, it's messy, and it's very, very human. It's a world that gets completely transformed, again and again.
And if you look at the greatest hits from the history of science, this model just clicks.
Think about Copernicus, right? The world didn't just add a new astronomical fact. We completely flipped our entire place in the universe. Or Newton, or Einstein, who totally rebooted our understanding of space and time. These weren't just updates, they were total reality shifts.
And here's what's so mind-bending about this. A revolution doesn't just change the answers. It changes the questions you're allowed to ask. It changes what counts as evidence. It's like an ancient physicist under Aristotle's rules and a modern physicist under Newton's could look at the exact same swinging pendulum and they would literally be seeing different things. One sees an object trying to get back to its natural resting place. The other sees a mechanism of repeating motion. They're living in different worlds.
And that, of course, leads us to the really uncomfortable question we have to ask ourselves. If this is how science actually works, through these radical shifts that change our view of reality, what does that mean for our science right now? Are all the things we take for granted as solid truth just part of one big period of normal science, just waiting for the next big anomaly to come along and tear it all down?
So at the end of the day, the big takeaway is this: science is not the clean, straight road to truth that we learned about in school. It's a much more exciting and much more human story. It's made up of these long, quiet periods of puzzle solving, which are then suddenly and completely shattered by these incredible, violent intellectual revolutions that change everything we think we know about the universe.